There is a material so advanced, so impossibly thin, that manufacturing a single gram costs thousands of dollars on Earth. Graphene. Carbon sheets only a few atoms thick, stronger than steel, lighter than air. The backbone of future technology. Scientists spend years trying to produce it in sterile laboratories with precise temperatures and careful chemical processes. Every sheet requires controlled environments and specialized equipment. But in June 2024, Chinese researchers opened a container of lunar soil and found something that should not exist. The moon had been manufacturing graphene on its own for billions of years, in absolute silence, without anyone watching, and that was only the beginning of what the far side had been hiding. 15 minutes of silence. Chang'e. He had spent 6 years preparing for a moment he could not control. As flight director for Chang'e 6, he had overseen every calculation, every simulation, every contingency plan. His team had rehearsed failures they hoped would never happen. They had mapped terrain they could not fully see. They had built a machine smart enough to think for itself. But when the lander began its final descent toward the far side of the moon in May 2024, Chang'e could only watch. For 15 minutes, his spacecraft would be completely alone. The far side of the moon is not dark. It receives just as much sunlight as the face we see every night. But it is silent in a way that makes it almost unreachable. Radio waves do not bend around corners. The moon itself acts as a wall of rock, blocking every signal between Earth and the hidden hemisphere. China had launched a relay satellite called Queqiao years earlier to bridge that gap.
China having successfully launched a new communications technology satellite from its Wenchang space launch site in Henan province.
The name means Magpie Bridge, and it sits in a special orbit where it can see both Earth and the far side simultaneously. But during landing, even that bridge could not keep up. Commands arrived too late to matter. Corrections came after the moment had passed. The machine had to think for itself. In the control room, screens showed trajectory data, updating in delayed fragments. Chang'e watched the altitude numbers fall, 8 kilometers, 5, 2. Each number arrived seconds after the reality it described. The target was the South Pole-Aitken Basin, a wound stretching over 1,500 miles across, punched into the moon more than 4 billion years ago by an impact so violent it nearly cracked the entire world open. Scientists wanted samples from its ancient floor because no human technology had ever touched material from that depth. But that same depth made it one of the most dangerous landing sites ever attempted. Boulders the size of cars littered the approach zone. Slopes steep enough to flip the spacecraft waited in every shadow. Craters overlapped craters, each one hiding terrain the cameras could not fully read. The lander's artificial intelligence.
China has made history, successfully landing on the unexplored far side of the moon. The Chang'e 4 probe touched down on Thursday in the largest, deepest and oldest crater on the moon's surface and transmitted images back to Earth.
Scanned the surface in real time, comparing live images against hazard maps built from orbital data. It rejected unsafe zones, adjusted thrust, changed angle, chose stability over speed while fuel burned away and gravity pulled harder. Dust thrown up by the engines blinded the sensors. The low gravity made every movement unpredictable. A small bounce could tip the lander. A wrong calculation could end everything. One mistake. That was all it would take. Then the signal came through. Contact confirmed. Legs down. Stable. Chang'e exhaled. The basin remained silent. But humanity had just touched ground that no one had ever reached before. And 53 days later, when the return capsule landed in Inner Mongolia, the real mystery was waiting inside. 2 moons in one, Dr. Li Chunlai was among the first to examine what came back. He expected pale dust, the kind Apollo astronauts had tracked through their lunar module, the kind that looked like ash from a dead campfire, gray and lifeless and familiar. What he saw instead was darker, noticeably darker, and that single observation cracked open a mystery that had puzzled scientists for decades. Look at the moon tonight. The dark patches you see are called Maria, ancient seas of frozen lava that spread across the near side billions of years ago. They formed when molten rock erupted and cooled into smooth plains that reflect less sunlight. But the far side has almost none of these dark plains. It is brighter, rougher, covered in craters piled on craters, with no volcanic floods to soften the view. For years, researchers could describe this contrast, but could not explain it with fresh evidence. Chang'e 6 finally delivered the answer. The moon is not one world. It is two geological personalities fused into a single body. The near side had more radioactive elements generating heat in its interior. That heat kept magma fluid and allowed lava to punch through a thinner crust again and again, painting the dark Maria that humans recognize. The far side was different. Its crust grew 20 kilometers thicker. Its interior stayed cooler by hundreds of degrees. Lava could not break through that lid. Two hemispheres, two thermal histories, one moon carrying a split personality for 4 billion years. That revelation alone would have justified the entire mission. But the soil held secrets that went far deeper than anyone expected. If you are still here, you are about to learn something most people will never know. Subscribe now so you do not miss what comes next. Carbon from chaos. Under the microscope, researchers found structures that should only exist in laboratories. Graphene, carbon arranged in sheets only 2 to 7 atoms thick, wrapped around mineral grains, like delicate shells. The same material that costs fortunes to manufacture on Earth was sitting in lunar dust, fully formed, waiting to be discovered. But here is the catch. The moon has no atmosphere, no chemistry, no factories, no biological processes. There is no known mechanism that should produce graphene in a dead, airless world, baked by radiation and frozen by shadow. Unless you count violence. Every day, the lunar surface is bombarded by micrometeoroids traveling at tens of thousands of miles per hour. Without air to slow them down, even tiny grains deliver enormous pressure for a split second when they strike rock. In that instant, carbon atoms in the soil are squeezed, superheated, and forced into new crystalline patterns. Then they cool so quickly that the structure locks permanently in place. The moon has been running this experiment for billions of years, impact after impact, shock wave after shock wave, building graphene in silence, while humanity spent decades trying to replicate the process in expensive clean rooms. This changes everything, because if graphene exists naturally in lunar dust, then the soil itself becomes a resource worth fighting over. Lightweight composites for spacecraft hulls, protective coatings for habitat walls, conductive materials for electronics and power systems, all harvested from dirt that astronauts once considered nothing more than a nuisance to sweep away. The far side was not barren. It was a factory no one recognized. But graphene was not the only impossible thing hiding in that ancient basin, because the next discovery pointed to something even more valuable, something that should not exist on a world born from fire. Water in a world of flames. More than 4 billion years ago, a Mars-sized object slammed into the young Earth and threw molten debris into orbit. That debris gathered into a glowing globe of liquid rock. The entire moon was an ocean of magma, hot enough to turn nearby space into a furnace. Chang'e 6 brought back proof of this catastrophic birth. The soil contained mineral fingerprints that could only form if the whole world once sorted itself in a molten state. Heavy minerals sinking towards the core, light feldspar crystals floating upward like foam on a burning sea. An ancient ocean of fire, slowly freezing into the bright highlands we see today. A moon born from that kind of heat should be bone dry. Every drop of water should have boiled away in the first million years. But here is the catch. Researchers found water locked inside impact glass beads scattered through the returned soil. Solar wind hydrogen bonds with oxygen in the glass, and the beads act as tiny sealed reservoirs. Studies estimate this process could store hundreds of trillions of kilograms of water across the entire lunar surface. Other scientists discovered hydrated minerals containing over 40% water by weight. Not contamination from handling, not spacecraft residue. Actual lunar crystals holding water molecules trapped in their atomic structure. This changes everything. Because if water can be extracted from glass beads and minerals, future crews will not need to haul every drop from Earth at enormous cost. They will need heaters, power systems, and sealed chambers that can capture vapor in a vacuum. The barrier shifts from impossible delivery to industrial engineering. The moon is not a barren rock to be visited and abandoned. It is a world with hidden resources waiting to be unlocked by whoever arrives first. What the far side knew: 4 pounds of ancient dust now sit in laboratories across China. Inside that dust is evidence of 2 different moons sharing one body. Carbon structures born from billions of years of violence that humans pay fortunes to recreate in controlled environments. Water hidden in glass beads and crystal lattices on a world that should be completely dry. Minerals that whisper of an ocean of fire that burned before Earth had stable oceans. The far side kept these secrets for 4 billion years, silent, patient, waiting for someone to finally reach across the void and listen. Now the question is not whether we understood the moon. The question is what else it has been building in the dark, and what we will find when we go back. If this changed how you see the moon, subscribe and hit the notification bell. More deep dives into discoveries like this are coming. See you in the next one.